There was a time when Gerard Butler's name meant strength, passion, and charm. From his unforgettable roar in 300 to his emotional performances in P.S. I Love You and The Phantom of the Opera, he became one of Hollywood's most beloved leading men. Fans saw him as the fearless warrior, the romantic hero, and the rugged heartthrob who could do it all. But behind the Hollywood lights and his infectious smile was a story much darker than anyone could imagine. At 55, Gerard Butler's life has become a portrait of pain, physical, emotional, and deeply personal. The man who once seemed indestructible has faced one heartbreak after another, devastating injuries, career struggles, and a battle with loneliness that fame could never fix. Behind every red carpet appearance, every charming interview, there's been a quiet storm brewing, a private war that's slowly taken its toll on his body and spirit. Those closest to him describe a man who has given everything to his craft but lost pieces of himself along the way. From near-death experiences to the haunting realization that his once promising future has been forever changed, Gerard's story is not one of glamour, it's one of survival. This is the side of Gerard Butler the world rarely sees, the man behind the muscles, the heart behind the hero. And as he turns 55, the truth about his struggles, regrets, and resilience will leave you heartbroken, but full of admiration for the man who refused to give up. Gerard Butler's story didn't begin in Hollywood. It began in the small town of Paisley, Scotland, where he was born in 1969. Raised in a working-class family, Gerard's early life was anything but easy. His father left when he was a child, leaving his mother to raise him and his siblings alone. The absence of a father figure left a deep wound that shaped much of who Gerard would become. A man constantly striving for approval, love, and purpose. Before fame ever found him, Gerard was far from the spotlight. He studied law at the University of Glasgow and even landed a job at a prestigious law firm. But beneath the professional exterior was a man who felt trapped. He drank heavily, partied harder, and carried a gnawing sense that he was living someone else's life. "I was lost," he once admitted. "I didn't know who I was or what I wanted." At 25, his life took a sharp turn. He was fired from his law job just days before qualifying as a solicitor, an event that should have destroyed him but instead pushed him toward his destiny. Gerard packed his bags and moved to London, determined to chase a dream he'd buried long ago: acting. But Hollywood success didn't come overnight. Gerard struggled for years, living in small apartments and taking odd jobs to survive. His big break came when he was cast as the Phantom in The Phantom of the Opera, 2004, a performance that showcased his raw emotion and powerful presence. But it was 300 that catapulted him into superstardom. As King Leonidas, he embodied strength, courage, and charisma, qualities the world came to associate with him. However, behind the warrior exterior was a man still fighting his own demons. Fame brought wealth and admiration, but it also magnified his insecurities. He began relying on alcohol and painkillers to numb both physical and emotional pain. The demanding stunts and intense filming schedules left him with chronic injuries, some so severe they nearly ended his career. One of the most terrifying moments came in 2011 when Gerard was involved in a near-fatal surfing accident while filming Chasing Mavericks. He was pulled under massive waves, barely escaping with his life. "I was underwater for too long," he recalled. "I thought that was it." The experience changed him forever, forcing him to confront his own mortality. But even after surviving that ordeal, life didn't get easier. The years that followed saw Gerard battling addiction, burnout, and heartbreak. Relationships came and went, leaving him increasingly isolated. Despite his success, he often spoke about feeling lonely and misunderstood. "It's strange," he once said. "You can be surrounded by people and still feel completely alone." Hollywood's expectations only added to the pressure. Typecast as the tough guy, Gerard struggled to find roles that reflected his emotional depth. He wanted to be seen as more than an action hero, but the industry wasn't always willing to let him evolve. The result was a career that seemed both blessed and cursed, filled with blockbuster moments but haunted by missed opportunities. Still, Gerard never stopped working. His determination to keep going, despite personal struggles and constant pain, earned him respect among peers. Co-stars often describe him as deeply kind, funny, and compassionate, a man who hides his pain behind humor. Yet, those who know him best say the real Gerard Butler is much more vulnerable than he lets on. As he entered his 50s, that vulnerability became harder to hide. The toll of years of physical injuries and emotional battles began to show. And though he rarely talks about it, friends say the man who once seemed unbreakable is now quietly coming to terms with how fragile life truly is. At 55, Gerard Butler's story is not about defeat, it's about endurance. He may have faced tragedy, loss, and unimaginable pressure, but through it all, he remains the same fighter who rose from the streets of Scotland to the top of Hollywood. The question now is, how much longer can he keep fighting before the pain becomes too much to bear? While the world saw Gerard Butler as the tough, battle-scarred hero from 300, law-abiding citizen, and Olympus Has Fallen, behind closed doors, he was living a very different story. The strength he projected on screen was in sharp contrast to the exhaustion he carried in real life. Fame had given him everything: fortune, respect, and recognition. But it had quietly taken something even more precious: peace. Gerard has always been open about his long and difficult battle with addiction. Before becoming a movie star, he'd struggled with alcohol abuse throughout his early 20s. He managed to stay sober for years after achieving fame, but Hollywood's high-pressure lifestyle slowly began to chip away at his resolve. Between grueling film schedules, loneliness on set, and the constant pressure to stay relevant, the temptation to escape through old habits grew stronger. The injuries didn't help. Years of physically demanding stunts left Gerard with a laundry list of ailments: broken bones, torn ligaments, and chronic pain that would haunt him for decades. He was prescribed medication to cope, but soon the line between pain relief and dependency began to blur. What started as medical necessity quietly turned into another battle for control. In 2012, the world learned just how serious things had become. Gerard checked himself into rehab, seeking treatment for a dependency on prescription painkillers following his surfing accident. It was a brave move, but also a heartbreaking one. For many fans, it was the first glimpse behind the curtain, a moment when the indestructible warrior revealed his humanity. "I didn't want to live like that anymore," he later said. "I wanted to feel alive again." After rehab, Gerard began rebuilding himself piece by piece. He took time away from blockbuster roles, focusing instead on smaller projects that spoke to his heart. But even as he healed physically, the emotional scars remained. He often talked about feeling isolated, about how fame could make a person disappear into their own loneliness. "People think you're living the dream," he once reflected, "but sometimes you're just surviving the nightmare." Adding to that pain were the repeated disappointments in his love life. Despite being linked to several high-profile women over the years, Gerard never found lasting love. He once admitted that his work consumed him so completely that it left little room for a real relationship. "I've sabotaged so many chances at happiness," he confessed. "Maybe because deep down I never believed I deserved it." The loss of friends and colleagues only deepened his struggle. The deaths of people close to him reminded Gerard just how fragile life is, pushing him into bouts of reflection and sadness. Those around him say he's become quieter over the years, less focused on fame, more interested in meaning. He spends much of his time away from the Hollywood spotlight now, dividing his life between Los Angeles and Scotland, often escaping into nature to find clarity. Despite everything, Gerard continues to work. Acting for him isn't just a profession, it's therapy. He pours his pain into his characters, channeling the emotion he can't always express in real life. That raw vulnerability is what makes his performances so compelling. Whether he's portraying a broken father, a flawed hero, or a man seeking redemption, there's always a piece of Gerard's real struggle behind the performance. Friends describe him as humble, spiritual, and deeply introspective. He meditates regularly, practices gratitude, and supports numerous charities quietly behind the scenes. Yet even with all his progress, the shadows of the past linger. The physical pain never fully left, and the emotional weight remains heavy. "I'm still learning to forgive myself," he once said. for the mistakes, for the pain I've caused, and for the times I wasn't strong enough. Today, at 55, Gerard Butler is no longer chasing stardom, he's chasing peace. He knows the cost of fame, and he's learned that success means nothing if it doesn't come with joy. But the road to that peace hasn't been easy. It's been filled with battles no camera could ever capture. Battles that show us the real Gerard Butler, not the hero of Sparta, but the wounded soul still fighting for redemption. As Gerard Butler steps into the later years of his life, the once celebrated action hero is no longer chasing box office glory or critical acclaim. Instead, he's searching for something far more meaningful: peace, forgiveness, and a reason to keep believing in himself. The tragedy of his journey isn't in what he lost, but in how much pain he endured while the world thought he was living a dream. In recent years, Gerard has spoken less about fame and more about healing. After decades of pushing himself to the edge, both physically and emotionally, he finally began to slow down. He moved away from the chaos of Hollywood, spending long stretches of time in Europe and the Scottish countryside, where he could walk for hours without being recognized. Those who've met him there describe a man transformed, calmer, softer, but still carrying the quiet sadness of someone who's seen too much. His close friends say he's learned to live differently. He meditates, writes, and often talks about the importance of inner peace over outward success. "I used to think happiness came from doing more," he said in an interview. "Now I realize it comes from doing less, but doing it with purpose." It's a statement that perfectly captures where Gerard Butler is today. A man no longer running from his past, but learning to live alongside it. Still, there are moments when the old pain resurfaces. The regret over lost relationships, the haunting memories of near-death experiences, and the loneliness that fame could never cure. All of it lingers. But Gerard has stopped hiding from it. He's learned that the only way to heal is to face the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it might be. One of the biggest lessons he's shared is about vulnerability. For a man once defined by physical strength and toughness, he now believes that true courage comes from admitting weakness. "We all break," he said. "The question is, what do we do after we break? Do we hide or do we rebuild?" And rebuild he has. Over the past few years, Gerard has quietly invested in projects that matter to him, including humanitarian work and mental health advocacy. He's traveled to areas affected by natural disasters, worked with organizations providing clean water, and helped raise awareness about addiction recovery programs. These acts of compassion aren't about publicity, they're about purpose. For the first time in his life, Gerard isn't performing for cameras. He's living for meaning. Despite stepping back from the Hollywood spotlight, he continues to act in select roles that resonate deeply with his personal journey. Films like Plane and Greenland showcase not just his intensity, but his emotional depth, characters who fight against impossible odds, mirroring the same resilience Gerard has shown in real life. Privately, he has also found a new appreciation for solitude. He no longer fears being alone. Instead, he finds comfort in quiet moments, in reading, in reflecting on where life has taken him. "I've learned to stop chasing," he confessed. "Sometimes, the best thing you can do is just be still and listen to what your soul's been trying to tell you." And what his soul seems to be saying now is that it's okay to let go of the guilt, the pain, and the need to prove himself. For years, Gerard Butler lived in a world where strength meant hiding your scars. But at 55, he's learned that true strength comes from showing them, from saying, "Yes, I've been broken, but I'm still here." In a way, Gerard's tragedy has become his redemption. The pain that once consumed him has turned into wisdom. The loneliness that haunted him has become his teacher. And though he may never fully escape the ghosts of his past, he's finally learning how to walk beside them instead of running away. The man who once conquered armies on screen is now fighting a quieter, more personal battle, the battle to find peace in a world that once demanded perfection. And while the world may remember him for his heroic roles, those who truly know his story will remember something much more powerful. Gerard Butler didn't just survive tragedy, he turned it into truth.